In the quiet suburbs of Maryland, where manicured lawns stretched like green carpets under the relentless summer sun, lived the Carter family. To the outside world, they were the epitome of Black excellence, a picture-perfect unit that neighbors envied and friends admired. Kenyatta Carter, the matriarch, was a successful businesswoman in her mid-40s, running a thriving consulting firm from her home office. Her husband, Trayvon Carter, was a charming sales executive who traveled frequently for work, always returning with gifts and stories that painted him as the devoted provider. Their son, Jelani, was a bright 6-year-old boy with wide, curious eyes and a smile that could melt the coldest heart. He was the glue that held their world together, or so Kenyatta believed. Kenyatta had met Trayvon 20 years earlier, back in college when life was simpler and dreams were boundless. He was the star of the basketball team, tall and confident, with a laugh that echoed through the dorm halls. She was studying business administration, focused and ambitious, the kind of woman who planned everything down to the last detail. Their romance was whirlwind, late-night study sessions turning into stolen kisses, promises whispered under starry skies. They married soon after graduation against her parents' mild reservations about his wandering eye, but Kenyatta was in love. She saw the good in him, the potential, and together they built a life. The early years were blissful. Trayvon landed a good job in sales. Climbing the corporate ladder with his natural charisma, Kenyatta started her consulting business, specializing in diversity and inclusion training for major corporations. Money flowed in steadily, allowing them to buy a beautiful 4-bedroom house in a gated community. Jelani arrived 6 years ago, a miracle baby after years of trying, and he completed their family portrait. Weekends were filled with barbecues, park outings, and church on Sundays. Trayvon doted on Jelani, teaching him how to throw a football, while Kenyatta captured every moment on her phone, posting curated highlights on social media with captions like, "Blessed beyond measure, family first, Black love." But beneath the surface, cracks were forming, subtle at first, invisible to anyone not looking closely. Trayvon's business trips grew more frequent, stretching from a few days to weeks at a time. He'd come home exhausted but affectionate, showering Kenyatta with jewelry or designer bags to make up for his absences. "Baby, you know I do this for us," he'd say, pulling her into his strong arms. For Jelani's future, college ain't cheap. And she'd believe him because she wanted to. Love, after all, was about trust. Lately, though, strange things had started happening around the house. Small items went missing. Kenyatta's gold necklace one week, a pair of expensive earrings the next, then cash from her purse, always in small amounts that she second-guessed herself about. "Am I losing my mind?" she'd mutter, checking drawers and pockets frantically. The worst was when her grandmother's heirloom bracelet vanished from the nightstand. It wasn't about the value. It was sentimental, passed down through generations. They had a maid, Ms. Odessa, a kind older woman from the neighborhood, who came twice a week to clean and help with laundry. She'd been with them for years, trustworthy and discreet. But after the bracelet disappeared, Trayvon insisted on confronting her. "We can't just let this slide, Ken," he said one evening, his voice firm. "People take advantage if you don't set boundaries." Kenyatta reluctantly agreed, and they sat Ms. Odessa down in the living room. The poor woman looked terrified, her hands trembling as Trayvon accused her outright. "We've noticed things missing, Odessa. Jewelry, money. It's adding up." Ms. Odessa denied it vehemently, tears streaming down her face. "Mrs. Carter, Mr. Carter, I swear on my Bible, I ain't touched nothing that ain't mine. I've been faithful to this family." But Trayvon pressed, showing her a list he'd compiled. Kenyatta felt sick watching it unfold. Ms. Odessa had a sick husband at home. She needed the job desperately. In the end, they let her go with a severance pay, but the damage was done. Kenyatta couldn't shake the guilt. Ms. Odessa had always been like family, baking cookies for Jelani and sharing stories of her own grandchildren. "Maybe we were too harsh," Kenyatta said later that night, lying in bed beside Trayvon. He pulled her close. "No, baby, better safe than sorry. We have to protect what's ours." Little did she know, Trayvon had his own secrets buried deeper than missing trinkets. Jelani, at 6 years old, was sharper than most kids his age. He spent a lot of time at home while Kenyatta worked in her office and Trayvon was away. He loved exploring the house, building forts in the basement, or playing with his toys in the living room. One afternoon, while Trayvon was supposed to be on another business trip, Jelani heard strange noises from upstairs, the master bedroom. Curious, he tiptoed up the stairs, his small feet silent on the carpet. The door was ajar and he peeked in. What he saw confused him at first. Daddy was home, but he wasn't alone. There was a woman with him, a pretty lady with long braids and red lipstick, laughing as they rolled around on Mommy and Daddy's bed. They were kissing, clothes scattered on the floor. Jelani didn't understand everything, but he knew it was wrong. Mommy wasn't there, and Daddy always said the bed was special for married people. He backed away quietly, heart pounding, and hid in his room. The woman, Naomi as he heard Daddy call her, stayed for hours. They whispered about money, about getting more from the house without Kenyatte noticing. Jelani pressed his ear to the wall, catching snippets. "The bracelet sold good," Trayvon murmured. "We can fence the rest soon," Naomi giggled. "You're bad, Trey, but that's why I love you." Jelani's world tilted. Daddy was stealing Mommy's things? And selling them? With this lady? He remembered Ms. Odessa crying when they fired her. It wasn't fair. Jelani was smart. He watched those detective shows with his mom sometimes. He knew he had to do something. Over the next few days, Trayvon continued his charade. He'd sneak Naomi in when Kenyatte was deep in conference calls or running errands. They'd rummage through drawers, pocketing small valuables, watches, cash, even Kenyatte's emergency credit card for quick cash advances. Naomi was greedy, pushing Trayvon for more. "Your wife won't notice if we're careful," she'd say. "She's too busy with her little business." But Jelani noticed everything. He started leaving his toys in strategic places, like recording devices from his spy kit birthday gift. One day, he caught them on his tablet's camera, hidden under his bed, aimed at the hallway. Clear video of Daddy and Naomi sneaking into the bedroom, carrying out a small bag of items. Jelani didn't know what adultery fully meant, but he knew betrayal. His daddy was hurting Mommy even if she didn't know yet. And blaming poor Ms. Odessa? That made Jelani angry. A fierce, protective anger for his mother who read him stories every night and made his favorite pancakes. One evening, when Trayvon was away again, but really just at a hotel with Naomi, Jelani climbed into Kenyatte's lap during story time. "Mommy," he said softly, his big eyes serious, "I have to tell you a secret about Daddy." Kenyatte laughed at first, thinking it was child's play. "What is it, baby? Did Daddy eat the last cookie?" But as Jelani spoke, showing her the hidden video on his tablet, her world shattered. There was Trayvon, clear as day, with another woman in their bed. Whispers about stealing, about framing the maid. Kenyatte's hands shook as she watched, tears welling up. Her perfect life was a lie. "How long, Jelani?" she whispered. "A while, Mommy, since the trips got longer." Her smart, brave boy had exposed it all. But Kenyatte wasn't one to crumble. She was a businesswoman, strategic, calculated. Rage burned inside her, but she channeled it. "Thank you, baby," she said, hugging him tight. "You're so brave. Mommy's going to fix this." That night, after Jelani slept, Kenyatte sat in the dark, planning. Trayvon and Naomi thought they were clever, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. She wouldn't confront yet. No dramatic scenes. Instead, she'd set a trap, one that would catch them red-handed. With evidence irrefutable, she started by reinstalling hidden cameras, professional ones this time. Linked to her phone, she discovered more missing items, playing the distraught wife to lure Trayvon into more thefts. And she contacted a lawyer discreetly, gathering financial records. 2 days after Jelani's revelation, Trayvon announced another trip. Kenyatte smiled sweetly. "Be safe, honey. I'll miss you." But as he left, kissing her goodbye, she knew the trap was set. Soon they'd walk right into it. Kenyatte Carter did not cry for long. After the initial wave of shock and rage passed that first night, something colder and sharper took its place, a calculated fury that she had honed over years of negotiating, multi-million-dollar corporate contracts. Betrayal from a stranger would have hurt. Betrayal from the man she had built her entire adult life around was something else entirely. It was war. She tucked Jelani into bed, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "Mommy's got this, baby. You just keep being my brave little man." Then she went downstairs, poured herself a glass of red wine she didn't drink, and got to work. The first thing she did was secure the evidence. She transferred the video files from Jelani's tablet to an encrypted folder on her laptop, backed them up to a cloud drive only she could access, and made physical copies on 2 separate USB drives, one hidden in her office safe, the other tucked inside a hollowed-out book on her shelf. She wasn't taking any chances. Next, she called a private investigator she had met years earlier through a corporate client, Marcus Hale, a no-nonsense former detective who specialized in infidelity and asset tracing for high-net-worth individuals. She scheduled a discreet meeting for the following morning at a coffee shop 20 miles away, far from their neighborhood. While Jelani slept upstairs, Kenyatta sat at her desk until 3 a.m., compiling a timeline. She pulled bank statements, credit card records, and Trayvon's travel itineraries for the past 18 months. Patterns jumped out immediately. Large cash withdrawals on days he was supposedly out of town. Hotel charges in cities he claimed not to have visited. Unexplained transfers to an account she didn't recognize. She flagged every anomaly with color-coded notes. By dawn, she had a dossier thick enough to bury him. The meeting with Marcus went exactly as planned. Kenyatta arrived early, dressed in oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap, nothing like her usual polished look. Marcus slid into the booth opposite her, nodded once, and listened without interruption as she laid everything out: the affair, the thefts, the framing of Ms. Odessa, Jelani's recordings. When she finished, Marcus leaned back and whistled low. "You don't need me to prove he's cheating. Mrs. Carter, you've already got that locked down. What you need is the rest: financial exposure, the identity of the mistress, and enough rope for him to hang himself legally." "Exactly," Kenyatta said, voice steady. "I want everything. Phone records, GPS data from his car, more video if possible. And I want to know who this woman is, full background." Marcus quoted his retainer. She wired it from a business account Trayvon had no access to before they even left the coffee shop. Over the next week, Kenyatta played the role of the oblivious wife to perfection. She greeted Trayvon with warm smiles when he returned from his trip, cooked his favorite meals, asked about his flights, and even initiated intimacy, acts that made her skin crawl but were necessary for the performance. Every touch, every fake moan fueled her resolve. Trayvon, arrogant in his deception, took the bait completely. He relaxed, grew bolder. He started bringing Naomi into the house more frequently, always when he thought Kenyatta was occupied with work, calls or outrunning errands with Jelani, but the house was no longer safe for him. Kenyatta had hired a security company to install 8 hidden 4K cameras with audio: living room, kitchen, master bedroom, hallway, garage, basement, even the backyard patio. All feeds streamed live to her phone and to Marcus's secure server. Motion alerts pinged her watch the moment someone entered a room. Jelani, now her tiny co-conspirator, understood enough to stay quiet. Kenyatta had sat him down and explained in simple terms. "Daddy is doing grown-up things that hurt Mommy very badly. We're going to show the truth so he can't hurt us anymore. Can you help Mommy by pretending everything is normal?" Jelani nodded solemnly, his little jaw set. He even started leaving his bedroom door, cracked at night, so he could listen for footsteps. Marcus's first report came 5 days later. Naomi Reynolds, age 29, part-time bartender and full-time. Opportunist with a rap sheet for petty theft and check fraud in 2 states. She and Trayvon had met at a hotel bar during one of his actual business trips 8 months earlier. Texts recovered from Trayvon's cloud backup, because of course he used the same weak password for everything, showed a relationship built on lust and greed. Naomi constantly pushed him to take more risks. "Your wife makes bank, baby. She won't miss a few thousand here and there." Trayvon, flattered and reckless, complied. They had already fenced over $28,000 worth of Kenyatta's jewelry and electronics through a pawn network in Virginia. Kenyatta read the report twice, then forwarded copies to her divorce attorney, Vanessa Brooks, a shark in heels who had dismantled more than one cheating executive. Vanessa called immediately. "Ken, this is airtight. Adultery plus theft plus conspiracy to defraud? In Maryland, that's criminal as well as civil. We can go for everything: house, retirement accounts, alimony, child support, and punitive damages. But if you want to maximize pain, we let him dig deeper first." "That's exactly what I want," Kenyatta replied. So the trap deepened. Kenyatta began, accidentally, leaving temptations around the house. She bought a new diamond tennis bracelet, insured, of course, and wore it once in front of Trayvon, gushing about how a client had referred her to an exclusive jeweler. Then she left it in plain sight on her dresser. She withdrew $5,000 in cash from her business account and stashed it in an envelope in her underwear drawer, mentioning casually over dinner that she was holding cash for an upcoming vendor deposit. Trayvon's eyes lit up both times. Within days, the bracelet vanished. The cash followed 2 nights later. The cameras caught everything in crystal clarity. Trayvon and Naomi, laughing quietly as they rifled through drawers, stuffing items into Naomi's oversized purse. Naomi even tried on some of Kenyatta's perfumes, spritzing her neck and saying, "Smells like money, doesn't it?" Kenyatta watched the footage alone in her office, volume low, face expressionless. Each frame was another nail, but she needed one final, undeniable act, something that crossed from civil wrongdoing into felony territory. Vanessa suggested the perfect bait, a safe. Kenyatta had a floor safe installed in the master closet behind a false panel, professional job, invisible unless you knew where to look. She stocked it with $15,000 in marked bills obtained through Marcus's law enforcement contacts, several pieces of high-value jewelry, and a folder of fake bearer bonds she had printed for the occasion. Then she made sure Trayvon overheard her on a business call, discussing the safe and its contents. "I really should update the combination," she said loudly into her phone while Trayvon lingered in the hallway. But 0715, Jelani's birthday, is just so easy to remember. 3 nights later, Trayvon told her he was heading out for a late client dinner and wouldn't be home until morning. Kenyatta kissed him goodbye at the door, smiled sweetly and said, "Have fun, baby." The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, she opened the camera app. Trayvon returned less than 20 minutes later, alone at first, then letting Naomi in through the side gate. They moved quickly to the bedroom. The hidden camera in the closet captured every second. Trayvon spinning the safe dial, 0715, grinning as it clicked open. Naomi's gasp of delight as they pulled out stacks of cash and glittering jewelry. Their whispered celebration. Naomi stuffing it all into a duffel bag while Trayvon kept watch. They didn't notice the second camera Marcus had installed inside the safe itself. When they left an hour later, backs turned to the lenses, high-fiving like teenagers who'd pulled off a prank. Kenyatta finally allowed herself a small, icy smile. She forwarded the new footage to Marcus and Vanessa with a single line, "We're ready." The next morning, Trayvon woke up to an empty bed and the smell of breakfast cooking downstairs. Kenyatta was at the stove in her silk robe, flipping pancakes, humming softly. Jelani sat at the counter coloring. "Morning, handsome," she called cheerfully as Trayvon shuffled in. "Sleep well on your trip?" He yawned, stretched, kissed the top of her head. "Yeah, baby. Productive night." Kenyatta plated his food, set it in front of him, and met his eyes. "Good," she said softly, "because today is going to be even more productive." Trayvon frowned, fork halfway to his mouth. "What's that supposed to mean?" Kenyatta reached into her robe pocket, pulled out her phone, and pressed play. The kitchen filled with the sound of his own voice from the night before. "Jackpot, baby. We're set for months." Trayvon's face drained of color. Kenyatta leaned in close, voice low and deadly calm. "Sit down, Trayvon. We're going to have a very long conversation. And then the police are coming." Trayvon's fork clattered against the plate, eggs spilling onto the marble countertop. His eyes darted from the phone, screen frozen on the frame, of him and Naomi celebrating over the open safe to Kenyatta's face. For the first time in their 20-year relationship, he saw no warmth there, only cold, unblinking resolve. "Baby, wait. This isn't what it looks like," he stammered, voice cracking as he pushed back from the counter. His chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. Kenyatta didn't move. She stood perfectly still, arms crossed. The phone still held out like evidence in a courtroom. "It's exactly what it looks like, Trayvon. High definition, time-stamped, with audio. You breaking into our safe. You and your little girlfriend stealing $15,000 in cash, my jewelry and bonds. All while I was asleep upstairs." Jelani, sensing the tension, had quietly slipped off his stool and retreated to the living room. Kenyatta had told him this morning might be a grown-up talking day, and he knew to stay out of sight. Trayvon's mind raced. Deny, deflect, buy time. It's what he'd always done, charm his way out of everything from failed exams in college to missed mortgage, payments early in their marriage. But the look in Kenyati's eyes told him charm wouldn't work this time. Listen, I can explain. Naomi, she's got problems, debts, bad people after her. I was helping her out just temporarily. I was going to put it all back. Stop. Kenyat's voice cut through his words like a blade. You've been stealing from me for months. You sold my grandmother's bracelet. You let Miss Odessa take the fall for it. You brought that woman into our bed, into our home, while our son was down the hall. Don't insult me by lying now. Trayvon's shoulders slumped. The salesman in him knew when a deal was dead. He switched tactics, remorse. He dropped to his knees right there in the kitchen, reaching for her hands. Kenyate, please. I messed up. I got weak. The pressure from work, the travel, it got to me. But I love you. I love Jelani. We can fix this. Counseling, whatever you want. Just don't do anything rash. She pulled her hands away, as if his touch burned. Rash? You think calling the police is rash? You committed felony theft, Trayvon. Multiple counts. Conspiracy. You framed an innocent woman and destroyed her livelihood. This isn't a marriage problem anymore. This is a crime. His face hardened for a split second. Anger, flashing through the fear before he masked it again. You'd really send me to jail? The father of your child? Think about Jelani. Kenyatta laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the sunlit kitchen. I'm thinking about Jelani. I'm thinking about what kind of example you've set, about how he watched you lie, steal, and cheat, about how he's the one who first caught you. My 6-year-old son had to protect his mother because you wouldn't protect your family. Trayvon's mouth opened, then closed. He hadn't known about Jelani's recordings. At that moment, the doorbell rang, 3 sharp chimes. Trayvon's head snapped toward the sound. Who? That would be the police, Kenyate said calmly. Walking past him to the front door, he lunged, grabbing her wrist. Ken, wait, please. She yanked free and turned on him, voice low and fierce. Touch me again and I'll add assault to the charges. He froze. Kenyat opened the door to 2 uniformed officers from the Montgomery County Police Department, accompanied by Detective Ramirez, a plainclothes investigator Marcus had coordinated with. She'd filed the report yesterday, complete with video evidence, financial records, and sworn statements. Mrs. Carter? Detective Ramirez asked, glancing past her at Trayvon, who stood pale and motionless in the kitchen doorway. Yes, come in. He's right there. The officers moved efficiently. Trayvon didn't resist as they read him his rights and cuffed him. He kept his head down, avoiding Kenyate's gaze. As they led him out to the patrol car parked in the driveway, neighbors had already begun to gather on their lawns, phones discreetly raised. Kenyate stood on the porch, arms folded, watching until the car pulled away. Inside, Jelani ran to her, hugging her legs. Is Daddy gone? For now, baby, she said, kneeling to his level. He did some very bad things, and now he has to answer for them. But you and me? We're going to be okay. Better than okay. She spent the rest of the day fielding calls. Vanessa confirming that Naomi had been picked up at her apartment an hour earlier. Marcus sending over additional evidence from Trayvon's phone. Hundreds of texts. Photos, even plans to drain a joint investment account next month. By evening, the story had already started circulating in neighborhood group chats. Did you hear about the Carters? Police took Trayvon this morning. Kenyate didn't care. Let them talk. The next week was a blur of legal proceedings. Trayvon was arraigned on charges of grand larceny, burglary, entering his own home with intent to steal counted, thanks to the safe, conspiracy, and theft under false pretenses. Bail was set at $50,000 money he didn't have without access to Kenyate's accounts, which she'd frozen immediately. Naomi, facing the same charges plus priors, couldn't make her lower bail and remained in custody. Trayvon's public defender advised him to take a plea, but his ego wouldn't allow it. He insisted on fighting, claiming entrapment, coercion, anything to shift blame. Vanessa shredded those arguments in pre-trial motions. The video evidence was overwhelming. The marked bills had been recovered from Naomi's apartment. Kenyat, meanwhile, focused on rebuilding. She rehired Ms. Odessa the very next day, with back pay, an apology letter signed by both her and Jelani, and a permanent raise. Ms. Odessa cried when she read it, hugging Kenyate tightly. I knew you'd see the truth, baby. God don't like ugly. Jelani started therapy, short, play-based sessions with a child psychologist specializing in family trauma. He drew pictures of monsters with Daddy's face, Then pictures of him and Mommy in a new house with a big yard. Kenyatte attended every session, learning how to help him process the betrayal without carrying it into adulthood. She also filed for divorce, seeking full custody, the house, all marital assets, and punitive damages. Vanessa attached the criminal case as Exhibit A. Trayvon tried to reach her multiple times, from jail, through his mother, even through mutual friends. Messages of apology, promises of change, pleas for mercy for Jelani's sake. Kenyatte didn't respond to any. One night, 3 weeks after the arrest, she sat in her office reviewing discovery documents when her phone buzzed. With an unknown number, against her better judgment, she answered. It was Trayvon using his one call. "Ken," he said, voice hoarse. "I know I don't deserve it, but please, just hear me out." She stayed silent. "I'm sorry. For everything. The lying, the stealing, Naomi, all of it. I got lost. But losing you and Jelani, this is waking me up. I'll do the time, whatever they give me. Just don't let him forget me, please." Kenyatte took a slow breath. "Trayvon, you made your choices. Every day for months you chose to betray us. You chose to let an innocent woman suffer. You chose greed and lust over your family. Jelani will know the truth when he's old enough to understand it. And he'll know that his mother protected him. That's all I can promise you." She ended the call. The trial date was set for early spring. Prosecutors offered Trayvon a plea. 5 years with possibility of parole after 3, in exchange for testimony against Naomi, who was trying to pin everything on him. He refused at first, but after seeing the full weight of evidence, including pawn, shop surveillance of him selling Kenyatte's jewelry, his resolve cracked. He took the deal. Naomi, abandoned, took one of her own. 7 years, no parole for 5. Sentencing day arrived on a crisp April morning. Kenyatte attended, dressed sharply in a navy suit, Jelani safely at school. She didn't speak during victim impact, but submitted a written statement read by the prosecutor. "Your Honor, the defendant didn't just steal objects. He stole trust, safety, and childhood innocence from our home. He taught our son that love can be a lie. The damage is immeasurable. I ask for the maximum sentence allowed under the plea." The judge obliged. As Trayvon was led away in orange jumpsuit and shackles, he finally met Kenyatte's eyes across the courtroom. No charm left, no excuses, just brokenness. She felt nothing. Outside, under blooming cherry blossoms, Vanessa handed her the final divorce decree, signed, sealed, effective immediately. Full custody, house in her name alone, all retirement accounts, investments, and Trayvon's share of her business profits awarded to her as restitution. Freedom! That night, Kenyatte and Jelani ordered pizza, built a blanket fort in the living room, and watched his favorite animated movie. Halfway through, he paused it and looked up at her. "Mommy, are we going to be okay now?" She pulled him close. "Yes, baby, we already are." But even as peace settled over the house for the first time in years, Kenyatte knew this wasn't the end. Trayvon would serve his time, Naomi hers. Life would move forward. Yet something lingered in the back of her mind, a loose thread from Marcus's final report, a name mentioned in one of Trayvon's old texts, someone else who'd known about the thefts, someone who'd helped fence items early on. A friend? A relative? The reckoning, she realized, might not be fully over. 6 months had passed since Trayvon's sentencing. The Carter house, now officially just Kenyatte's house, felt lighter, quieter, and safer. Jelani had started first grade with a new confidence, making friends easily and excelling in reading. Therapy had worked wonders. He rarely mentioned his father anymore, and when he did, it was without the tight fear that used to grip his small face. Kenyatte's consulting firm had grown exponentially. Word of her personal strength had spread in professional circles. Somehow the story of the executive who took down her thieving husband with airtight evidence became quiet legend among Black women in corporate spaces. Referrals poured in. She hired 2 new senior consultants, expanded into government contracts, and even started mentoring young entrepreneurs on the side. Life was good. Not perfect. There were still nights when anger flared unexpectedly, or when Jelani asked why Daddy couldn't come to his school play. But good. Then Marcus Hale called. It was a Thursday afternoon in October. Kenyatte was in her office reviewing proposals when her private line rang, the one only a handful of people had. "Mrs. Carter," Marcus said without preamble, "we need to meet, today if possible. I've got something on that loose thread we flagged before sentencing." She remembered. The name in Trayvon's old texts, Dre, short messages like, Dre handled the watch, got $2K, and tell Dre we're good for next week. At the time, prosecutors hadn't pursued it aggressively. They had Trayvon and Naomi dead to rights on the major charges. But Marcus had kept digging quietly, at Kenyatte's request and expense. They met at the same distant coffee shop. Marcus slid a thick folder across the table. Andre Dre Wilkins, he began, 34 years old. Small-time fence operating out of a barbershop in Southeast. DC multiple priors receiving. Stolen goods, possession, nothing violent. But here's the kicker. He's Trayvon's cousin. Second cousin, technically. Same grandmother on the paternal side. Kenyatte's stomach tightened. Family. Trayvon hadn't just betrayed her with a stranger and a mistress. He'd brought in blood to profit off her. Marcus continued. Dre was the primary receiver. For the first wave of items, the jewelry sold early on, including your grandmother's bracelet. Pawnshop owners ID'd him from surveillance. Phone records put him in contact with Trayvon over 40 times in the last year. And get this. After Trayvon's arrest, Dre went quiet for a bit, then started moving similar high-end pieces through the same channels. Different source, but the pattern matches. Kenyatte flipped through the folder, photos of Dre leaving the barbershop with a duffel bag, stills from pawnshop cameras, text message screenshots recovered from Trayvon's seized phone, bank deposits into an account linked to Dre totaling over $35,000 in the past 18 months. He knew exactly what he was doing, Marcus said. And he knew it was coming from family. Trayvon bragged in one text, "Wife won't even notice, too busy building her empire." Kenyatte closed the folder slowly. The rage she thought she'd buried resurfaced, hot and sharp. Trayvon was paying for his crimes behind bars, Naomi too. But this cousin, this blood relative, had been walking free, spending money stolen from her home, from Jelani's future. "What are our options?" she asked. "Strong ones," Marcus replied. DC Metro Police are interested. Fencing stolen goods across state lines bumps it to federal if we push. I've already spoken to a detective I trust. They'll take the case if you file a supplemental report and provide the evidence chain. Dre's not sophisticated. He's still using the same phone, same accounts. Kenyatte nodded. Do it. Within days, the machinery turned again. Detectives executed search warrants on Dre's barbershop and apartment. They recovered several pieces of jewelry that matched descriptions from Kenyatte's insurance claims, items. Trayvon had stolen early in the scheme before he got sloppy with Naomi. More damning, a notebook with handwritten entries listing items, dates, and payouts, including the bracelet described in detail. Gold heirloom bracelet. Family piece, 5K payout. Dre lawyered up quickly, but his public defender couldn't stop the tide. Faced with overwhelming evidence, and Trayvon, now cooperating fully for a sentence reduction recommendation, Dre took a plea, 3 years federal prison, full restitution ordered. But the story didn't end with Dre's arrest. During debriefing, Trayvon revealed something that made Kenyatte's blood run cold. Dre wasn't just fencing, Trayvon told prosecutors in a recorded session. Early on, when I first started taking things, I didn't know how to move them safely. Dre suggested I blame someone else if anything got noticed. He's the one who said, "Fire the maid. Old black ladies always get suspected first." Kenyatte read the transcript in Vanessa's office, hands trembling with renewed fury. Ms. Odessa's tear-streaked face flashed. In her mind, the day they'd confronted her, the humiliation, the loss of income for her sick husband. Dre hadn't just profited. He'd orchestrated the racism-tinged scapegoating that nearly destroyed an innocent woman's life. Kenyatte added a civil suit against Dre for emotional distress and conspiracy, attaching Ms. Odessa as co-plaintiff. The judge fast-tracked it. Dre, already incarcerated, had no assets to speak of, but the symbolic judgment and the permanent record mattered. Ms. Odessa received a settlement from the Criminal Restitution Fund, plus a personal check from Kenyatte that covered 2 years of lost wages and medical bills for her husband. "You didn't have to do this," Ms. Odessa said when Kenyatte handed her the envelope at her doorstep. "Yes, I did," Kenyatte replied. "We take care of our own." As winter approached, the legal storms finally quieted. Trayvon's cooperation shaved a year off his sentence. But he'd still serve at least 3. Naomi remained silent and bitter in her cell. Dre began his time in a low-security federal facility. Kenyatta stood in her kitchen one December evening, watching Jelani decorate a small Christmas tree they'd picked out together. Lights twinkled against the windows. The smell of pine and hot chocolate filled the air. "Mommy, can we put the star on now?" Jelani asked, holding the glittering topper high. She lifted him up, steadying him as he placed it perfectly. "There," he said proudly. "It's beautiful." "Yes, it is," Kenyatta agreed, kissing his cheek. For the first time in years, the house felt truly hers. No hidden cameras running, no secrets lurking in drawers, no performances of happiness. But late that night, after Jelani was asleep, Kenyatta opened her laptop to an email from Marcus, one final update. "Thought you'd want to know." During routine mail screening at Trayvon's facility, guards intercepted a letter addressed to him from an old associate. Contents suggested an attempt to reach out to another family member about unfinished business regarding assets. "We flagged it with corrections and the U.S. attorney. Nothing actionable yet. But eyes are open." Kenyatta stared at the screen for a long moment. Unfinished business. She closed the laptop, walked to the window, and looked out at the quiet street blanketed in fresh snow. Let them try, she thought. "I'm ready." The house was clean now. The traps were gone because they were no longer needed. She protected her own. And if anyone else came for what was hers, for her peace, her son, her future, she would bury them too. 2 years had passed since Dre's sentencing. The calendar read December 18th, 2025, and snow fell softly outside the windows of Kenyatta's new home, a modern 5-bedroom, in a quieter part of Montgomery County, bought outright with the proceeds from her booming business and the final restitution payments. The old house had been sold. Too many ghosts lingered in those walls, hidden cameras, whispered betrayals, the echo of handcuffs clicking in the kitchen. Kenyatta had walked through it one last time, touched the banister Jelani had slid down as a toddler, and closed the door without looking back. Now, at 30 months post-divorce, life had not just stabilized, it had flourished. Jelani turned 9 in November. He was tall for his age, with his mother's sharp eyes and a quick laugh that filled rooms. He played travel soccer, built intricate Lego cities that spanned the entire basement, and had a best friend named Malik who came over every weekend. Therapy had ended a year ago. The psychologist's final note read, resilient, securely attached, thriving. He still saw Trayvon, supervised visits every other month at the correctional facility. The first few were awkward, stilted. Trayvon tried too hard, bringing coloring books and snacks, talking about how much he'd changed. Jelani listened politely, answered questions, but kept a quiet distance. Over time, the visits settled into something neutral. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but acknowledgement. A biological fact, nothing more. Kenyatta never attended. She didn't need to. Trayvon's letters to her, apologies at first. Then updates on his GED classes, his counseling, his plans for life after release, went unread into a folder marked for Jelani. When he's 18, Trayvon would be out in 18 months, with parole conditions and a permanent felony record. He'd taken trade courses inside, earned certifications in HVAC and electrical work. Kenyatta wished him no harm. She simply wished him far away from her peace. Naomi served her full 5 years before parole eligibility. Last Kenyatta heard, she'd been transferred to a facility in Pennsylvania after a disciplinary issue. Dre remained inside, quiet and unremarkable. The threats Marcus had flagged, the intercepted letter about unfinished business, turned out to be bluster from an old associate trying to scam Trayvon out of non-existent money. Federal investigators closed the file. No one else came knocking. Kenyatta's world had expanded in ways she never anticipated. Her firm, Carter Consulting Group, now employed 20 full-time staff and operated in 6 states. She'd landed a major contract with the Department of Education for nationwide equity training, and Forbes had named her one of 50 over 50 innovators earlier that year. The article's headline, From Betrayal to Boardroom, How One Woman Turned Personal Pain into Corporate Power. She laughed when she read it. The truth was simpler. Pain had sharpened her focus, stripped away illusions, and left room only for what mattered. Romance had re-entered her life cautiously. His name was Elijah Grant, a widower, architect, father of a teenage daughter. They met at a charity gala for HBCU scholarships. He was quiet, steady, with kind eyes and hands that built beautiful things. Their first date was coffee that lasted 4 hours. The second was dinner he cooked at his home, salmon, roasted vegetables, and honest conversation about grief, parenting, and second chances. He never rushed her, understood when she said, "I have trust issues the size of Texas," laughed when she admitted she'd run a background check. Marcus had retired but still owed her favors. He met Jelani 6 months in, took him to a Wizards game, and let the boy beat him at Mario Kart without faking it too obviously. Jelani approved. "He's cool, Mommy, and he doesn't lie." They weren't engaged, not yet, but Elijah spent most weekends at the house, and his daughter Amara had her own drawer in the guest room. They were building slowly, deliberately, the way strong structures are made. On this snowy December evening, the house glowed with warmth. Elijah and Amara had come over for dinner. Jelani and Amara were upstairs battling in a new video game. Their laughter drifting down the stairs. Ms. Odessa, now officially retired but still family, had dropped off a pan of her famous mac and cheese earlier, with strict instructions to heat at 350, no more, no less. Kenyatte stood at the kitchen island, finishing a salad while Elijah stirred the pot of chili simmering on the stove. Snow tapped gently against the windows. "You okay?" he asked, glancing over. He'd learned to read her silences. She nodded, then smiled. More than okay, just taking it in. He crossed the kitchen, wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. "You built this, Ken, all of it." "We built this," she corrected softly. Later, after dinner and board games and hot chocolate with too many marshmallows, the kids finally crashed on the couch during a Christmas movie. Elijah carried Amara to the guest room while Kenyatte tucked Jelani into his bed, kissing his forehead. Downstairs, she poured 2 glasses of wine and joined Elijah by the fireplace. 2 years ago today," she said quietly, "I was sitting in a courtroom watching Trayvon get sentenced. I thought that was the end of the story." Elijah took her hand. "Turns out it was just the prologue." She laughed, eyes shining in the firelight. "Exactly." Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in clean white. Inside, the house was full of noise, of warmth, of chosen family. Kenyatte leaned her head on Elijah's shoulder and, for the first time in years, felt no vigilance in her rest. No scanning for threats, no traps to set, just presence. The little boy who had once hidden a tablet under his bed to protect his mother now slept soundly down the hall, dreaming of soccer goals and Lego empires. The woman who had once planned every detail of revenge now planned vacations, school projects, and quiet Sunday mornings. The story that began with betrayal, theft, and a smart child's courage had ended not in destruction, but in reconstruction, stronger, higher, unbreakable. Kenyatte raised her glass. "To new foundations," she whispered. Elijah clinked his against hers. "To new foundations." And in the glow of the fire, with snow falling softly outside and loved ones breathing steadily upstairs, Kenyatte Carter finally closed the book on the past.